Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream at the end of Seattle's draft. I mean, I say the end, the draft is still going on. We'll let you know if they jump back into the 7th round, which I think is unlikely, but we'll see. I thought that was an unbelievable Seahawks draft. I think it deserves an A+ grade. There's no point messing around. Let's just get into it. I thought that was superb. I think that is one of the best draft classes that John Schneider has done. I think he has shown, without a shadow of a doubt, amid all of this hand-wringing over him and how he operates and everything, that he is one of the best GMs in the NFL. I think he's proven that today. I don't mind saying that. Not just today, over the course of these 3 days. I think he is a very good GM. I think the Seahawks are moving in the right direction, and I'm very happy with that draft. So we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about all of the picks today. There are a lot of them to talk about. Just a word, we kind of set the lofty goal months ago of trying to get to 10,000 subscribers before the draft. And as the draft is about to finish, I wasn't expecting to get this close, to be at 9,750 or whatever we're at. So I just want to thank everybody who has subscribed in that period. And if you haven't subscribed, if you would consider doing it now, that'd be sort of like one last little thank you for all the work that we do. If you could subscribe to the channel, I can see super chats coming in already. We will get to those as soon as possible. Again, if you have a question, a thought, or anything that you want putting on the screen, or if you just want to support the channel, send those super chats in. But Robbie, I'm absolutely delighted with how those 3 days have gone for two main reasons. One, I think the Seahawks have significantly improved their roster. I think they made picks that were value picks right across the board. I think even getting into that final pick of Ricky White, the third, they're getting value with all of their picks. They have drafted players who can contribute and start for this team, even on day 3. So that's the first thing. And the second thing I'm really happy about, whenever I do this, Robbie, and it's a long slog from one summer to the next, my biggest hope and just aim is that when it gets to the draft, we've just talked about the players the Seahawks end up drafting so that people feel like they got something out of the blog. And looking at the draft class, there's only one player that we didn't really get into, and it's because his testing was bad and he wasn't really expected to be drafted, and that's the lineman from Iowa. And frankly, if there was going to be one player they drafted, Robbie, who I didn't know anything about, give me the Iowa linemen, because they tend to be okay. You know, Iowa linemen tend to stick in the NFL. So if that's the one pick out of all of the picks that they've made that I don't feel like we've spent any time on, I'm happy with that. So I'm really happy with the process, really happy with the work, really happy with what the Seahawks have done. It's an A+ for me. What is it for you?
Yeah, for me, it's an A, absolutely, all the way. I think it was a great draft. You know, it's funny that you brought up, you know, Mason Richmond, that lineman. I went out and looked, and because I didn't know much about him either. He wasn't one of, you know, Iowa linemen. They're just kind of those guys. And we did talk about, though, early on about like just draft a bunch of linemen from Iowa because they seem to be good. Like I remember when we had that conversation, it's pretty funny, and we actually did. But it turns out he had one of the highest graded pass blocking in all of college football last year. So I mean, that's pretty cool to see. I mean, I like seeing that. You know, and I think you can really tell that testing at the combine matters because all these guys tested. I mean, other than Mason Richmond, tested really, really well. And, you know, traits matter. You know, they're looking for specific things that matter to them. And I think you can see that. You know, even the tight end from Alabama, he's going to be great on special teams. You know, Ricky White, great on special teams. Like they'll have a place on the roster, and can earn other you know, roles should they keep competing. So I'm really like this draft. I'm really happy with you know, what they did, and I feel like every player we got can contribute. So I think you can't really ask for much more than that.
I'm really glad they took Ricky White, because I only interviewed 2 players this year. One was Ty Robinson and one was Ricky White. So people go and check out the Ricky White interview after you finish this stream, because he's a really great guy. I'm absolutely delighted the Seahawks have drafted him. And I had a chance to interview a few others. I could have interviewed Jackson Slater and Oladejo from UCLA. I was that close to getting Gray Zabel at one point. But they don't do any views on YouTube. So I kind of thought, you know, it's a lot of effort for not a lot of gain. But I'm really glad that of the 2 that I did, one of them has ended up in Seattle. So I'm really pleased about that. So I'm going to share the draft class on here, and we can kind of just go through it because they made a lot of picks. How many did picks is in the end? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 picks. They made 11 picks, Robbie. So let's start with the picks that they've taken today. And I'm just going to give you a thought on this. And obviously, they haven't addressed every need. And when you have 11 picks, you kind of think, well, where's the nose tackle? Where's the extra
corner?
Where's the like? I think it's probably worth remembering that they had a visit with Shaquille Griffin just before the draft. So I suspect that was with an idea of, if we don't draft anybody, do you fancy coming back? And I suspect that will happen now. That they're probably going to sign Shaquille Griffin in the coming days. They may well go and get a veteran linebacker somewhere. The good thing is I'm trying to keep an eye on who is being drafted. I saw that Garrett Dellinger, the lineman from LSU, has been drafted. That's a bit of a shame because I thought he had some potential there. But there's still some decent linebackers on the board. So when it gets to undrafted free agent, Jackson Woodward, who's Ricky White's teammate, has not been drafted. Justin Barron's not been drafted. Chandler Martin, Eugene Asante's not been drafted. You've got players there that are still available. And then at cornerback, Kobe Bryant, Tommy Hill, Jabbar Muhammad, Zay Alexander, Xavier Scott, who I really like. You've got some players who could be good, even at safety. Maxon Hook, Keandre Jackson. There's good players still there. So I think undrafted free agency is going to be big for the Seahawks. There's going to be some further opportunities to make this even better. But Riley Mills is a player that, watching him last season, he jumped off the screen. And at one point, Robbie, I had him graded in round 2 based on how he was performing as a pass rusher. Great penetrator, excellent athleticism. There was talk of him running in the 4.7s. That's why I had him in round 2. If he'd have not run in the 4.7s, I would have adjusted that grade. But that was the talk that, and even if he's just a 4.8 runner, that's unbelievable at his size, at 300 plus pounds. He just looks the part of, he's not a Braden Fisk level pass rusher, but somebody that you could well imagine coming into the NFL and having that kind of an impact, maybe, or maybe 75% of that impact. That's how good he was. And then he injured his knee in the playoffs, and that has hampered his stock. So because of the injury, because we didn't get any testing results, because there has to be an injury flag there, Robbie, he was in red on my horizontal board. I moved him down to round 3. But we're talking about a player that could easily, with a clean bill of health, have gone round 2, round 3, definitely a day 2 type of prospect, Robbie, and they get him in round 5. And I know that he's recovering from a knee injury, but he says that's coming along well. I don't know if you've seen the phone call that he had with the Seahawks. It's the one they've had in ages.
Yeah.
It's fired up. I love this pick, and this is a steal for the Seahawks based on an injury that he's recovering well from. This is an absolute steal in round 5.
Yeah. So I'm actually stoked that we drafted him for a couple of reasons. I came away, I went to a Notre Dame game this year against Stanford, and there's 3 things that I took away from that game. One was I didn't want to draft Riley Leonard. I didn't like the way he looked live. I just, for some reason, and even fans around me were complaining that they just couldn't throw the ball very far. Just a lot of accuracy issues there. But the second one was that Riley Mills was a beast. He didn't have a huge stat line in that game, but he was a disruptive force the whole time. I mean, it was crazy. And so yeah, that was the other one. And then the other one is, the last one is, I'm really interested to see, I can't remember his name, the kid who was backing up Riley Leonard at Notre Dame at quarterback. He came in because Notre Dame just stomped all over Stanford, and he looked really good. So I'm interested in him. But yeah, those are the 3 things that I took away. So when we drafted him, I'm stoked. I'm excited to see what he can do for the Seahawks, because he's a hell of a football player. And yeah, you're right. A knee injury brought him down, and we're lucky to have him in the 5th round.
Absolutely. And he can play a bit of 5 technique. He can sort of do that role very, very well. He can anchor, he can get around a block. He can dip inside. He's got that sort of shifting ability to just take a side step and then burst through a gap. You can line him up at 3 technique, and he can rush with a swim rip. He's got that burst and quickness off the line of scrimmage. He is the kind of player that goes early. And in a draft full of defensive tackles, Seattle got one of the better ones. Seattle got one of the better defensive tackles in this draft. And the injury stuff, yeah, if it was a chronic problem that he'd been out for a long time or anything like that, you might be a little bit concerned. But it's an ACL. ACL surgeries are not the death sentence for your career that they were 20 years ago. And he seems to be recovering already. So I'm really optimistic about that pick. That has got decent rotational potential starter player written all over it in round 5. And you need some of those players.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a good football team, you need to have a few hits in day 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic selection. I was super happy about it. So
Riley Mills there, round 5. Tory Horton, again, this is exactly the same situation. I had a round 2/3 grade on Tory Horton. If you watched Colorado State, I mean, they have been bad. And he carried the offense for 2 years. And then this season, he got injured, and that prevented the same thing happening again. But there was so much buzz around him before that injury. People were going, there's this receiver at Colorado State, and he's really good. And, he is the offense and everything like that. And he's tall, he's lean, he can be a kick returner, good hands, extremely mature professional player, team captain for 2 seasons in a row. It's just ticking every single box off. He's just got an injury. And yet he went to the combine and ran an exceptional 40. So the injuries, he's recovered from that. I have no idea why he's lasted to round 5. And yet the Seahawks are ready to pounce. That's another player who, look, Puka Nacua was a 5th round pick, I think. You can find these players and they end up just being tremendous value, tremendous contributors for your football team. And I think Tory Horton can do that. So you've got Jackson Smith-Njigba, you've got Cooper Kupp. And for me, Tory Horton could be your 3rd receiver this year. And not because of default, but because of quality, because of talent. And he's exactly what they look for, Robbie. Worst case scenario, special teamer. He's going to be very good at that. He can be a kick returner and everything like that, maybe punt returns. So to get him at the end of round 5, I'm stunned. I'm absolutely stunned. They got 2 day 2 talents there, 2 day 2 grades on my board. And people can go, stop being too optimistic, Rob. I mean, everybody knows me. I'm always so optimistic. But all you have to do is click on the horizontal board. The players are graded where the players are graded, Robbie. We're talking about 2 day 2 picks.
Yeah. Wait, the guy ran a 4.41 or something like that at the 40 or the 40-yard dash at the combine, and he's got like a 38-inch vert or something like that. This guy, he can play. I think the only real knock on him, other than the injuries, is that he's kind of a slender dude. But man, yeah, he watched some of his tape, and I mean, he was, like you said, the whole offense for them. Everything ran through him. So you're getting a player who he's going to come in, he's going to contribute right away. Like you said, he could possibly be the 3rd wide receiver right out the gate.
He reminds me of the players that the Niners take. They're the kind of receivers that the Niners take. And not Deebo Samuel, obviously, but the sort of the more traditional receivers that the 49ers take are very much like Tory Horton. So I can't believe he was there. I can't believe he was there. You get to this point in the draft of the player like that, and you think there must be some, like, his legs might have fallen off over the weekend or something. Like, he must not be capable of playing because of health. And you see him there in the 5th round, they take him, and you just think that's absolutely brilliant. So love that pick. That, there was a celebration from me for the Riley Mills pick, a celebration from me for the Tory Horton pick. I'm, the Robbie Ouzts one, I have no issue with it whatsoever. Now, I thought I had him down on my board as an undrafted free agent because he is a fullback. He is going to have to switch from tight end to fullback. That is a position that I would have thought a very competitive market in undrafted free agency for the teams that use that kind of role was going to be the thing for Robbie Ouzts. And you could easily imagine Seattle being one of those teams. He is a big guy, 275 pounds, ran a 4.45 short shuttle. So even though he's a 4.9 runner, he's got that agility. He's got that sort of change of direction. That's what you kind of want. Because he's been a tight end, you can, in the red zone, you can have him sort of run out into the flat. You can have him be part of that. You can carry the ball, Robbie, as well, I suspect, given his frame. It was kind of hilarious watching him at the combine because it did look a little bit like one of Pat McAfee's friends had just been invited onto the field to have a go at the combine. But, I have no problem with it. And even though he's an undrafted free agent, and even though they took him round 5, and even though there were other players who I graded higher on the board, they clearly have a role in mind for him. And you're not taking a fullback in round 5 unless you really believe in the guy. So they must really think he can be a contributor for us. We like a lot about him. We know what the role is going to be. He's probably going to be heavily involved in special teams as well. So therefore, I'm going to give them the grace of taking someone that I had undrafted free agent grade on my board because they clearly know what they want to do with this guy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was a little surprised when the name came across, just how early it was for him. But clearly they see value there and what they want. And like you said, special teams is probably where he's going to shine. And playing a little halfback or fullback, and see how that goes. But yeah, I'm okay with it as well. There were players that I would have rather had at that time, but I'm not going to be mad by the rest of this draft with what they did.
Absolutely not. So, and I think it's going to be, he's a fun player. Like, he is a fun player to watch. He hammers people. I mean, it's the kind of player that I like to watch. He is that kind of Baltimore Ravens style player. So good to have him on board. Bryce Cabeldue. Now, here's the other reason why I'm okay with it, Robbie, because if they'd have taken Robbie Ouzts at, the 22nd pick in round 7, no one would be saying anything. And I would have happily taken Bryce Cabeldue, Damien Martinez, and that pick instead, or Ricky White for that matter. I had them all graded in that kind of range. So, if I had Bryce Cabeldue a lot higher and Damien Martinez higher. So Cabeldue for me was somebody who had a mid-round grade because you see a lot of potential, on tape. His zone blocking grade is similar to Kelvin Banks Jr.'s, and he's not doing it at a crap school. He's doing it, at Kansas, and he's performing. He's an explosive tester. So the only players in the whole draft who were more explosive on the offensive line than Bryce Cabeldue were Armand Membu, Luke Kandra, and Luke Newman. That was it. So Cabeldue was a 3.25 in TEF. Do you know who was a 3.23, Robbie?
No, I don't.
Gray Zabel.
Gray Zabel. There you go.
So he's pretty much the same explosive testing results as Gray Zabel. Now, I thought it was very interesting that John Schneider referenced in an interview with Pat McAfee that Zabel ticked the 30-30-30 thing that they look for. He made reference of something that was 30-30-30, and he said 30 vert, 30 bench, 30 test score. And I'm trying to find out what the test score part of that means, because to me, it just sounds a lot like they have a similar system to TEF, which we've been recording for years, which is the vertical, the broad, and the bench. And we take a score from each of those three things and give them a score. Now, it seems to me a little bit like maybe they've created something like that. Maybe the test score is an intelligence test like the Wonderlic. Maybe it's a complete profile of, he's complete athleticism. Maybe they take into account short shuttle and 10-yard split or something in a test score. That's what it could be. It could be a multitude of things. But they clearly have some kind of system there, and they were pumping it up for Gray Zabel. I really like that for a couple of reasons. One, because it's something that we've been looking at for a long time, and it kind of validates the work that we do. And also, the evidence is there, Robbie, from the TEF articles that I write, that most, if not all, of the top offensive linemen in the NFL are explosive testers. They all are. So you might as well draft explosive testers because they're going to give you the best chance to find someone who can stick in the league. So you've got Gray Zabel and Bryce Cabeldue now, who both have got the testing profile of a top offensive lineman in the NFL. Now it's your job to coach them up, Robbie, and make them great.
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, that's why I said at the beginning, like traits and testing, they matter, and you can clearly see that's how they're drafting. He's super fast or super quick, and his mobility makes him really good for in the zone blocking scheme. And I think he's just going to be a guy you can develop and possibly plug in, and could be one of those picks that you're just like, you didn't expect him to be something, but you got him in the 6th round. He could be a 10-year starter for you. You're on mute, Rob.
I had him on late round 3, and I thought he probably was going to go round 4, and he didn't. And I watched his tape, and it was impressive. Like, it was very, very strong in the zone blocking system. I don't think he was as effective in the zone blocking system as Chase Lunt, who I think went to the Bills in the end. But the thing with Lunt was he's not done any testing because of the injury. So you don't actually know you don't have any kind of physical profile for him. Whereas with Cabeldue, you do. So I think it's a very, very good pick. And I was ecstatic with that. That got a celebration out of me as well. And then Damien Martinez, I thought he was a 4th round pick. I had him at the top of the sort of day 3 running back list, around the top of a couple of others. Thought he was going to go in the 4th round. This is a player that is often billed as a power back, but actually, I think he's misunderstood, Robbie. His size is actually ideal. He's 6'4", he's about 220 pounds. That's an ideal running back frame. He does have feet to make people miss. He can break tackles in a number of different ways with agility and speed. He is explosive. He's a fantastic explosive tester. He is very much, again, it's another thing that we've done for years and years, is the Seahawks tend to look for guys that match his profile, that are big explosive testers who have the ideal prototype running back frame. And that's what he has. So he can be a starting running back in the NFL. Doesn't mean that he will be. Doesn't mean that he's ever going to be that lead man. But as someone who could be a really solid number two, as somebody who, Zach Charbonnet's injured and Ken Walker's injured and we need someone to carry the rock for a few weeks, he can do that. I think there's a lot of potential there. I don't understand why some of these other running backs came off the board before he did. He is a very, very good player. Very good player. This is tremendous value in the 7th round. He is somebody who can stick on the roster. And when you're talking about a 7th round pick, Robbie, to have someone as good as Damien Martinez there, I think that's fantastic. That's an A plus pick for me.
Yeah, what I really like about him is he's super patient and he's got really great vision. So if you watch him, watch his tape, he's just a really good back. And yeah, I was surprised to get him there in the 7th round. I saw Curtis post something that he said something about him being the next Marshawn Lynch or Beast Mode 2.0, and Curtis made a reference to him being more like a Chris Carson, which I feel is like a really good reference. He's similar to a Chris Carson kind of player.
I completely agree. I liked that. I noticed that Brady Henderson gave Curtis a shout out for that comparison. He obviously liked it as well because it makes some sense. That is the kind of thing we're talking about here. It's an excellent point from Curtis. That's the kind of player that he can become. Chris Carson, a former 7th round pick as well. So, yeah, I just think it's indicative of the work they've been able to get done, that they can go and get somebody, like that in that kind of range. It's just another home run. Then there's the player Mason Richmond that I concede I have not done major work on. I have watched the Iowa offensive line to death, but I did not single him out like the others. So I can't offer much there other than, is it not the microphone? What I can offer is he had a 79.6 pass blocking grade through PFF. And it seems as if that score would have been a lot higher, but he had a really bad game against Ohio State, which is not a surprise. It's Ohio State, and they dominated Iowa that day. And he had sort of okay games against UCLA, who've got good pass rushers, Missouri and Minnesota. He played very well against Iowa State. He played very well against Washington, Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Maryland. So pass blocking is good. 6'6", 307, I think he was listed at. He played at 312 last year. And then I also have his zone blocking grade, which is a 74 points. Oh, sorry, no, it's a 76.9. 76.9. So it's a fraction below what Connor Colby was. He's just been drafted by the 49ers. So, clearly Iowa's scheme is a perfect production line for the Seahawks and the Niners and teams like that. So I'm not surprised at all that they've gone for someone there. His short shuttle was good. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. I think it was a 4.65. So it's a good short shuttle. So he's got that agility. He's not an explosive tester, but we're talking about someone here in the middle of the 7th round. So I think it's good. And, I hope that they stick with this Iowa offensive line idea, because Jennings Dunker didn't declare. He is an exceptional zone blocker, played right tackle. Logan Jones, the center, is tailor-made for this system. They're both going to be playing for Iowa next year. And I would love to see both of those players in Seattle in the future. So I think, anytime you draft an Iowa offensive lineman, Robbie, I'm down for it, as we discussed.
Yep. Yeah. They're just built different there in Iowa. Those guys, just feed them well, teach them right.
And speaking of Iowa, Luke Lachey, the tight end's just been drafted by Houston. which goes to show, these guys are going in the 7th round. There's so much quality still on the board. To see players like that coming off the board in round 7. I think we're on to Mr. Irrelevant now because Trikweze Bridges has been drafted. I'm surprised that he got drafted in the end. I liked him. He's an absolute madhead, but as someone with the potential, he had it, and I actually gave him a draftable grade. And I'm surprised he's actually been drafted, though, because all the feeling was that he wasn't going to get drafted. And there's some other players who are going to go undrafted now as a consequence. But the Patriots have got the Mr. Irrelevant pick, and then the draft will be over. And that's that for another year. All that work is done. And there's only one player left for us to talk about, and that is Ricky White at the end. And I interviewed him for a reason, Robbie. I had very high grades on him during the season. I thought when you watched UNLV, they had a very interesting season and they were relevant and competitive. They had the shootout against Syracuse, which was one of the most entertaining games of all of the college football last season. He consistently made plays downfield. I loved his body control, his ball tracking. He reminded me of a poor man's Nuke Hopkins. He just had something about him. Now, he is very slender, he's very slim. He did well at the Shrine Bowl. And I think he is a player that maybe just lacks the wow factor physically in terms of his testing and his frame, but he's a good player and he's a good guy and he's really determined. I thoroughly enjoyed interviewing him. It was a great period with him. He was extremely respectful. He's a good guy, and I can't wait to root for him, Robbie. To get somebody like that at the 22nd pick in the 7th round is an absolute daylight robbery pick for me, and he is somebody who can stick on this roster.
Yeah, he has a great ability to create separation, and I think that's one of the things that stand out on tape with him. And he's got a really good route running tree. So, for me, I think it's a home run pick. I think I read somewhere too that he had blocked like 4 punts this year or something like that. So you can throw him in special teams. There's a lot of ways you can use this guy. And again, he'll probably make his name on special teams to start out, but yeah, he has a chance to stick on the roster as a wide receiver as well and do something there. So what a great pick and a value pick there. I mean, you're taking kind of best player available and he sticks out for sure.
The thing about White is when you watched UNLV, I think this is the best compliment I can give him, is that he felt he was their clear star on offense. It was just throw the ball to him. And every time you watched UNLV, he had a big game. He would make big plays. He was the X factor player for them. And to get him in the 7th round is tremendous. So that's all of the day 3 picks. A quick recap on the others. I saw somebody mention in the comments when we get to the super chat shortly. Someone mentioned in the comments what made me change my mind on Jaylen Milroe. Well, the reason I've changed my mind on Jaylen Milroe, and bear in mind, I was kind of up and down with these players. It's hard because and teams will have wrestled with these same conversations, Robbie. How do you balance out the extreme athleticism that he has, the brilliant running ability, the flashes of quality that you do see on tape versus the maddening frustration of the inaccuracy on a short and intermediate level, the just admittance that at the minute, based on his current standard of play, that you could not trust him to convert 3rd and 7 with his arm if you had needed to in a critical game. That's something that he's going to have to work on. But we're talking about a late 3rd round pick. We're talking about a pick that's pretty much a 4th rounder at this stage. I would have not liked that pick at 18 or 35 or 50 as much as I do at 92 or whatever it was. So I think at that point, it's a completely justified dart throw. And if he's never going to develop into a quarterback, I wouldn't bet against him having a role still on this team because he's too much of an athlete. So I have no issue at all with that. And the other thing I'd say is John Schneider is very, very picky with the quarterbacks that he picks. And for him to take one, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I like Milroe, the person. He's the kind of player that I want to root for, that I want to quarterback the Seahawks, that I want to see do well. So I really, really hope that he can turn into something. If it works out, you could have a star on your hands. Whether it works out or not is a huge question mark. But just imagine that if it did, that would be so exciting for the Seahawks. So exciting. And you can live with some inaccuracy. You can live with some bad plays sometimes on an intermediate level, Robbie, if everything else is great. If he's still putting points on the board, if he's still a dynamic running threat, if his arm is good and he can get it downfield, I just think why not take a chance on the guy at the end of the third round? I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. And I think as you were talking, that's kind of what I was thinking too. It's the value of where you picked him, right? If you would have picked him at 18, I would have hated the pick. It's terrible. But picking him at 92, yeah, like you said, you're throwing a dart just to see if you can get a hit on this guy. And if you can, I mean, this could be a guy that could be an absolute superstar, or he could just be someone on your roster who, I mean, he's still going to make a name for himself. I still think he's going to make the roster, and I think he'll make plays for you. It just might not be the starting quarterback position.
And then, quickly on the others, because we've already done streams on these. Elijah Arroyo was my 17th best player in the draft. And have you noticed that John Schneider said the same thing? He said he would have been a top 20, top 15 pick in the press conference afterwards if it wasn't for the injury concerns. So when I put out on Twitter, I think people think that I just do this for like bait or something, Robbie, just to be positive for the sake of it. And regulars will know that that's not how we deal with things on here. It's not how we operate. We call it as we see it. But with Arroyo, I genuinely had him written down. I did a top 40 board of my 40 favorite players. And he was at 17. And Jeremy Fowler said teams had him in the top 20, top 25. And it was the injury concern that had him not in there. And John Schneider said that. He is a fantastic player. Fantastic player. And you are going to have to manage him. You are going to have to keep him healthy. I get all of that. But he can be one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the NFL. I think that is well worth a swing of the bat. I really like Elijah Arroyo. Nick him and worry. I think because I was not as big on Nick him and worry as other people think I don't like him, Robbie. It was never that case. We started talking about Nick him and worry on the blog a long time before anybody else. Like, this guy is legit. Oh, wow. You watch him in the LSU game when he had that pick six callback for that terrible flag on Kyle Kennard. He flashed. He genuinely flashed. He looked the real deal. We were talking about it in the most positive ways that people could talk about him. It's just as the process went on, I suddenly started feeling like people were grading the athleticism twice. Like, the reason he was going to be a first rounder was because of the athleticism. Then he has a great combine, and everyone's suddenly moving him into the top 15. And it's like, well, that's too much. He's not you've just counted that twice. And then you see the character concerns, and I didn't think the Seahawks were going to take him because of that, but they did. And they clearly think this is a guy that we really, really, really want. And I trust them. I trust them because they have been so careful with character in the last few years. They clearly feel very reassured by this guy. And Mike McDonald clearly thinks he can be a massive impact player in that defense because they traded right up to the top of the second round to go and get him. And, by the way, this is another reason why it's an A-plus draft. That was not an expensive trade. Like, a third rounder to get all the way back up there. The Falcons had to give up a future first-round pick to go up 20 spots from 40-odd. Like, from 45 to the Rams. That was an appalling trade from the Falcons. You only need to give up a mid to late third to get up to 35. So I'm really happy with the pick. That's the kind of range. He should have been a 25 to 35 player. You've got him on the back end of that range. I think it's a great pick. And then there's Gray Zabel, a player that we talked about. I feel like way before he became a trendy kind of player, he just stuck out off the tape. He just stood out. I put the DM that I sent to Jeff Simmons on Twitter as soon as the Seahawks took him at the very start of December, saying, get this guy in Seattle. He looked like a dude. He looked like somebody who was perfect, the kind of player they don't take in the offensive line and we see go and have success elsewhere. So they've took him this time. Could they have taken other offensive linemen? Maybe. Would some people have probably rather them took Tate Ratledge as well and Jared Wilson and people like this? I get that. But as we said yesterday, Robbie, and this is a key point, I think that offensive system last year was about as bad as any offensive system was in the NFL last year. I don't think Ryan Grubb knew what he was doing. I think he was completely out of his depth and they had no solutions. And that's why I lasted 1 year and why I was fired and why they have not only just fired the college coaches and they have doubled down on experience. They've got an experienced defensive coordinator, an experienced defensive line coach, an experienced run game coordinator. They have loaded up on veteran experience in that coaching room to fix this offensive scheme. And that could do the power of good for Christian Haynes, who a year ago we all celebrated that pick. It could do the power of good for Anthony Bradford, for LeMaya, for Oluwatimi, for Sandell. You know, along with Zabel and Cabeldue coming into the mix. And if you'd have said to me, pick 2 offensive linemen to take in this draft, 1 early, 1 late, my 1 early would have been Gray Zabel. My 1 late would have been either Chase Lunn or Bryce Cabeldue, Robbie. So I'm really happy with that. I think, just to reflect on those picks and, you know, chime in, I think that is really, really positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's why it makes it an A draft. I mean, easy. It's an easy A. There's so many things I like about the draft. So many things I like about Gray Zabel. You know, I was convinced it wasn't going to be him just because, as you said, we don't draft these guys. And I knew it was a player I liked and just was like, it's not going to happen. But, you know, right when I got back from the combine and you and I got on the pod, the first thing I said, man, Gray Zabel, his testing was phenomenal. And, you know, it's just a guy that, oh, hold on. Zy Alexander, undrafted free agent, going to Seahawks. You're muted, sorry.
Seen that, and I have a 4th round grade on
Right.
Zy Alexander. I had a 4th round grade on Zy Alexander from LSU. It's another steal.
That's a steal. Yeah, I mean, it just gets better. It just keeps getting better. Yeah, this is a great draft. I'm stoked. Sorry, I was reading the comments, got sidetracked. I forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, it's a good draft.
Yeah, I'm just having a look now. If people want to post whether they see any reports of anybody signing, then stick them in the comments. It's crazy seeing the names there. Like Nick Nash didn't get drafted, Jake Majors, Max Brosmer. There's so many guys who didn't get drafted. Wow. It's unbelievable. Do you know one of the people? It's worth checking out his work. So the people may or may not know this guy. It's called Joe Goodberry, and he's a big Bengals fan, and he does a lot of draft stuff and a lot of Bengals stuff. And I followed him for a number of years, and he does a lot of good work, and he grades all the players. Do you know like 3 of his most highest graded players were in this draft? Nick Emanwari, Damien Martinez, and Tory Horton. And awesome. He was that. It's not just me. You know, it's not me saying things for the sake of it and being positive for the sake of it. It has been a really, really good draft for the Seahawks. So let's see who they can get in here. Zy Alexander is a really, really good start. That's a 4th round grade on a cornerback who went undrafted. So there we go. Who was Mr. Irrelevant? Kobe Minor of Memphis was Mr. Irrelevant. So the draft's finished. I'm looking at my horizontal board, by the way, and the only players, because there's 2 of them, who were left, Robbie, in the outside of day 3, because I think players who have got a day 3 grade, there's always a chance they will go undrafted. The only 2 players who I had left on the board who were above day 3 grades were Isaiah Bond, and he was never going to get drafted based on what's happened to him in the last couple of weeks. But I didn't feel like I didn't just thought I'm not just going to drop him to undrafted free agent or take him off the board. But he was always going to go undrafted. So it's really one player, and it's Logan Brown, the tackle from Kansas. And he punched a teammate in the face at Wisconsin, which got him kicked off the team. So that might be a character thing there. But he was a good zone blocker. Maybe he'll end up in Seattle. Who knows? So I'm really happy with how that has all shaped up. I'm really happy with the work that we've done this year. And I feel like the grading and evaluation was good and accurate. And I feel as if, you know, people will have got some benefit out of the coverage. If you followed along with us, you will have had a decent idea of who these players are. So really happy with all of that. Right, if there are, Robbie, do me a favor. I'm gonna have to go onto the super chat link now. But if you see any undrafted free agent signings that are announced after Zy Alexander,
I'll peek it. I'll pick up.
Just jump in.
Go for it.
Right, loads of super chats to get into and some very generous ones as well. Nick says, Rob, thank you. You make February to April tolerable and have done so for me since 2012. Your evaluations this year were so spot on. What is your biggest lesson or takeaway you have from 2 Mike McDonald, John Schneider drafts now. I think my biggest takeaway is that they know what they want, or Mike McDonald knows what he wants, and they're going to go after it. I think my biggest takeaway this year is that they now actually have a type of an offensive lineman that we can go and look at, from a scouting point of view. We can go and look for the kind of linemen that are going to fit this blocking scheme, which I think is great, because for a number of years, we've not had that. They've kind of had a mismatch of players who fit gap, players who fit zone. Now they've got a very defined system there. I think we're learning the kind of defenders that they like. And I think the other takeaway, I think that Robbie, tell me what you think about this, because I know what I'm going to say is going to annoy people. But I think John Schneider might be underrated as a GM.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if people underrate me. He's been doing this for a long time. I think there have been great drafts where it's been, what the hell was he thinking? Why did he draft these players? But a lot of that, we were like putting it back, like how much was it Pete controlling the draft or whatever. So it's really hard to say. I mean, he's had some phenomenal drafts as well. You could question a lot of things about him, some of his trade decisions, Mr. Peacock himself, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But you have to wonder, like,
was that Pete?
Right, exactly. And so I think that's where kind of the dilemma comes in when you're grading, John himself. But he's by no means, I think he's a great quarterback evaluator. That I know for sure, just by the people that he's liked in the past that he would be interested in getting. And yeah, I do trust John, and I think this is it's a good time to kind of just see what they're doing. I think another thing, I'll just say what I've learned as well from this is from the last 2 drafts. As I said earlier, testing and traits matter. And I think it's also starting to be important who comes for the top 30 visits, because there's quite a few players that we drafted that came in for top 30 visits. So I think those are things like in the past, we'd bring guys in and we think, oh, this is going to be exciting. Maybe it's a player we're going to get, and nothing. And it could be just, a smoke screen, but like they came in and brought guys in to really test them out, to see where they were at, to check character concerns, how comfortable they feel with them. So I think those are some things that I take over from the last 2 drafts.
Yeah, I think there's some great points there, and that they've drafted really good athletes this year. So I think maybe they're shooting for that upside, which is something the Niners have had success with over the years. So I'm glad to see that. Really glad to see that. And I thought the Seahawks are the best NFC West draft this year. So by far, the Seahawks maybe the best draft overall in the NFL. I think they had a really good draft. I thought the Cowboys had a really good draft, and they continued that today. And the Seahawks had a really good draft. Nicholas says, thank you for all the draft coverage, Rob. I think we did well on day 3 with some absolute steals in Horton and White. You've got to take credit for calling out some of these players early in the process, Sable, White, and Arroyo. Thank you, Nicholas. That's a really generous super chat. Much appreciated. Kyle says, thank you again, Rob, for another fantastic and hard-working year of draft coverage. Every year you seem to nail the Seahawks better and better. Thank you, Kyle. Really appreciate the kind words and the super chat. The Comic Binge says, any Seahawks content with Rob? And then he's put a little goat there. Thank you, Comic Binge. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Kelly says, thank you for all your investment in the great draft coverage. Thoughts on Swinson and Kobe Bryant falling so low? Bryant as an undrafted free agent. Yeah, I had Kobe Bryant. I had him round 4, late round 4. So I am a bit surprised by that. You always kind of have to wonder if there's an injury or a character reason for that. I'm shocked, Braden Swinson. Again, I suppose that's the other lesson, Robbie, and this is a lesson that you kind of take every draft. We know so little compared to the teams. The meetings that you just talked about, those official visits, the combine meetings, you don't get a feel for a person without having the sort of the extensive knowledge that the NFL teams have. So Braden Swinson, I can watch him on tape. He looks unbelievable. But I don't have the information as to what he's like as a person. I don't have the information to what his work habits are. I don't have his medical records. And it could have been injury. It could have been character. The talent, he had no business staying as late as he did. And I think a lot of people have said that today. But I think he went to the Patriots. I think it was around round 5. So could be a steal for them. So that's my thought on that. But yeah, maybe Bryant I know people want Kobe Bryant because they want another Kobe Bryant in Seattle. So we'll see what happens there. Romeo says, which positions would you like to see Seattle bringing in an undrafted free agent? I think you've got to look at nose tackle now. I think you've got to look at linebacker for a bit of depth. There's some good linebackers there. Cornerback, obviously, Zay Alexander was the best cornerback left on the board at the end of the draft in my horizontal board. He was the best one left. Best linebackers were Jackson Woodard and Justin Barron and Chandler Martin. So can you go and get them? Nazir Stackhouse was the top nose tackle left on my board. He could be an option there. There's some pass rushers, Jar Joyner, Jared Ivey went undrafted, Davin Van. You could look at them. I'd like to see Luke Candriff. You can get him in, or Nash Jones, because they're both very explosive. Can you get them in? Jake Brinningstool went undrafted. Joshua Simon, the tight end, went undrafted. Can you bring them in? Then at receiver, Brew McCoy, Ja'Cory Brooks, people like that. Can you have a look at them? And then find the running back, Jaquindon Jackson, Rocket Sanders, Josh Williams from LSU that I really liked. There's some good players there. I've pretty much run about half the positions in the NFL, so they're the positions I'd look for in the undrafted free agency. Jeremy says, Rob, you're the best in the business. We look forward to every video and article. Why Cabeldue over Luntz? Jeremy, thank you. I think I answered this earlier, but I suspect it's because they had a full testing profile for Bryce Cabeldue. Lunt's been injured. He got injured, I think, in the bowl game and has not been able to do any testing. And it may just be that they want they can take Cabeldue because they know what he is a bit more. They both had an official visit. Maybe one had created a better impression than the other, but I like both players. And I really like Chase Lunt, but he didn't do any testing. Matt says, hi, Rob. My brother introduced me to your content about a year and a half ago, and I've been hooked ever since. Thank you for all your hard work. Go Hawks. Thank you, Matt, and thank you to your brother for the recommendation as well. Much appreciated. Garth says, thanks for the great work, Rob and Robbie. Can't wait to see you on the Hawks nest again. Thanks, Garth. Appreciate that. Kevin says, I'm going to be filling out these JS apology forms for a while. I don't know. Do you think people... On that topic, and thank you, Kevin, for your super chat. Do you think people... I've seen a bit of it on Twitter. People have been very critical of John Schneider, Robbie. Do you think that will ease off a bit now? That he's done a lot of the things that they wanted him to do? He's had a very good draft? Do you think he's bought himself some patience and time there? Because I don't think the Seahawks are going to win the Super Bowl next year, and I don't think they're going to be a big contender in the playoffs. I think this is the next stage in the process of building Mike McDonald's team up, and you probably need another offseason and they still need to find out who's going to be the quarterback. Sam Darnold comes in, and we need to see what he can do. There's no sure thing there. Is it going to be Jaylen Milroe? Is it drafting another quarterback next year? Is it going and getting another veteran? We don't know. That's still to be determined. But I think as this process goes along, I think if the Seahawks went 10-7 again next year, Robbie, I don't think it'd be a fireable offense for the GM. But some people may think, well, you're not progressing here. But I actually think this has been such an effective offseason. I thought the moves in the veteran market and free agency were very, very good. I think this has been an exceptional draft. I think they're on the right track.
Yeah, I don't know if it's bought him time. I guess I don't think it from a fan perspective, I don't know if it bought him any more time per se, just because, someone, I don't know where it's at. I'm not going to try to scroll back up, but they rightly pointed out multiple things that, how long has the offensive line been terrible, and, how many misses have we had there, and other things that have been bad in the draft, which is, and then obviously the trade from Jamal Adams is added into that. And then someone said, well, you can't, I don't know if you can necessarily blame Pete, but I think Pete's definitely part of that. And, it's definitely, it's hard to say whether or not, John's bought him some time, but I do think it's a really good draft, and I think people should be excited about it. And, I think the last two drafts, I felt really good about what he's done. So, it's easy to hammer him when we're losing and things are terrible, but right now it's easy to kind of give him some praise. So we're looking at what he just did in the draft, and we're all pretty happy with it. So I think it just kind of is going to come down to how the next, season plays out and how well these players progress. Cause people were kind of hammering him for the Christian Haynes draft because he hasn't played, and he couldn't take over Laken Tomlinson or anybody else that was on that line that was just terrible. And, you spend a 3rd round pick on this guy and you're like, why isn't he playing? So it's easy to kind of remember some of those things. I don't know.
All fair points. I just think, you look at some of these other teams, and I think John has clearly made mistakes and would probably own up to that himself if he was on the stream with us now. But
as do most GMs, though, right? I mean,
that's the point. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
It's the same for everybody else. And I actually think he's recovered from a bad patch. You know, even if he was completely responsible for the Jamal Adams trade, it was awful. But he has recovered from that, has pulled off an even better trade since then, the Russell Wilson trade. I think the one thing he needed to do better this year was to have a better free agency, which I think he did. I think he showed some balls to move on from the players that he did and just draw a line under that. And I thought they did that. Do not underestimate how tricky it is to just move on from Geno Smith and DK Metcalf and do it with the effectiveness that he did, and it not be sort of a major melodrama. Like that would be huge in some other franchises. Like they're just kind of quietly gone about the business and addressed it. And I mean, look at the Steelers, Robbie. They've got Mason Rudolph and Will Howard. They're going to hope that Aaron Rodgers is going to sign for them in a couple of weeks. Seattle traded Geno Smith, and then within seconds, everyone was going, yep, Sam Darnold's going there. There was no drama at all. They planned it. They executed it. So I think that is worthy of some credit. THB says, I owe John an apology after the draft. Absolute. I don't know what the rest of that was supposed to be, but I think we get the gist of it, that you feel he deserves a bit of credit. And I agree. Krez says, thanks for your coverage throughout the draft. Go Hawks. Appreciate that, Krez. Dennis says, Rob, love all the time and effort into keeping us 12s informed. Would drafting Milroe this year preclude John Schneider from drafting a quarterback next year? Or does he go back to his Green Bay roots and draft QBs on a regular basis? Dennis, I think it comes down to who are the players available. I think if there's good quarterbacks that they can get to next year, they'll take another one. And I think that's even if Sam Darnold plays quite well, I think they'll be looking at quarterbacks every single year. I think they have been anyway. I don't think it's necessarily that he's returning to anything now. I think it's more a case of the players haven't been there. And look who they've passed on. You know, it's players who've not amounted to anything at all. So I don't think he's whiffed on anything. He clearly thinks Milroe was worth the shot. And I think if there's a player next year who is worth a shot, whether that's the first round or the sixth, I think he will continue to do that. Julian says, I'm hyped about the new offense and Emin Wari. Thank you, Julian, for the super chat. Brian says, wonder if part of the draft was feeding Kubiak. I mean, certainly setting up his system is a big thing. And that's what they've done. Offensive lineman to help, tight end to help, another running back. One thing about this scheme and this system is they get a lot out of running backs. Look at San Francisco. How many no-name running backs go in there and have success in this offense? So that's a good point to remember. Life is good 65 says, White's 40 isn't reflective of his speed. He's a joystick with the ball in his hands. Lay hands on fades and goes. Going to be more than a special team. I agree. I think we've said that. I really like him. Really, really like him. Daniel, this is a very generous super chat. Love the dog in the avatar as well. I really appreciate this. Daniel says, really appreciate how in tune you've been with the new organizational philosophy, Rob. Thanks for making the late rounds relevant with really insightful analysis. Daniel, I can't say thank you enough. It means the world for you to feel like you want to make that kind of a contribution to the channel. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. Arfman23 says, cheers, Rob, Robbie, Adam, Jeff. Amazing work this draft season. September and week 1 can't come soon enough. Here to that. Big Mike says, for your loss of sleep and efforts. Thanks, man. Yeah, I did not sleep very well again last night, Robbie. That was a very late. I didn't go to bed after we did our stream, you know.
Yeah.
I stayed up a bit longer than I should have done and was very, very, very tired today.
Man, I don't know how you do it. You just being here in the East Coast time. It was like 1 o'clock when I went to bed. And I was like, this is terrible. I don't know how you're doing it, man. It's
I don't
impressive.
have anything to do tomorrow, so I'm hoping I've got the house to myself as well. So I'm hoping that sleep will be had. But because I'm on my own, I have to get up and feed the dogs and all of that and let them out. So probably not. Jan says, A+ draft class, but first and foremost, congratulations to you, Rob, for your great work in the last year leading up to this draft. On behalf of all of us following you, thank you for making supporting the Seahawks so much fun. Thank you, Jan. I really appreciate that, Jan. Hank says, great year for you, Rob. We love your work, especially the horizontal board. Who was your favorite pick today? Well, that's a good question. I think my favorite pick. God, who was your favorite pick, Robbie? I need a bit of time to think about this.
It could be Riley Mills or Tory Horton. Those ones are kind of the ones that kind of like made me super excited. Like, I mean, I was excited about the Grays Able because I didn't think that was going to be the pick. But those were the two guys that kind of like, okay, like there we go. I like that.
I think Riley Mills gives you the best chance to have a starter or have somebody who can be really a big contributor. So for that reason, I say him, and also his call that we talked about earlier is just fantastic. He clearly wanted to be in Seattle. Was very fired up about it. So I love all of that. And then a close second would have been Ricky White, just because having spoken to him and helped get that interview set up and the process of going through. I know what a great guy he is. So I'm just really pleased that he's in Seattle. Thank you, Hank. Ryan, really appreciate that. Very generous super chat. Much appreciated. A+ grade for the 2025 draft class. A+ grade for Seahawks Draft Blog's 25 coverage. I've been following your analysis of the Hawks for a decade, Rob. This is such a small token of my appreciation for the work you put in every year. Wouldn't be the fan I am without you. Ryan, do you know what? It absolutely means the world for you to say stuff like that, because a lot of work goes into this. So I just want people to enjoy it and to get some benefit out of it. So that is not a small token of your appreciation. As far as I'm concerned, it's a massive one. And the words mean the world to me, because when you put a lot of work into stuff, you just want people to get something out of it. And if people get something out of the blog and of this channel, then that means everything. Michael says, favorite potential undrafted free agent. I like Seth McLaughlin. Seth McLaughlin's a weird one because he was so bad for Alabama last year. And yet for Ohio State, he was so much more improved. I don't know if that was a system thing or whatever. And then he tore his Achilles. So he's a good player. There's something in there, but if he's not going to play this year, you kind of wonder, it's so unfortunate for him, because he probably would have been like a 4th, 5th round pick otherwise. But we'll see. We'll see where he ends up. KJ says, great to be talking about young talent instead of DK and Gino. Yeah, I agree with that. Contract players drafted felt like they just fit perfectly, feel immediately competitive for the division next year due to our draft compared to our division rivals. Thanks. I think before we finish, Robbie, we'll just have a quick chat about the NFC West and where it lies after this. Taker610 says Zabel and Ratcliffe would have been fun to watch. It would have been, but it wasn't to be. And there's a lot of players that I personally loved that didn't end up in Seattle, and that happens every year. Chanman says, any trades after the draft that you want? That's a good question. I mean, go and get Trey Hendrickson, but I don't want to spend a 2nd round pick on him, so it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Huh.
I don't want Jalen Ramsey. I don't have any interest there. The word on the street, according to the NFL Network today, was that he might end up back in LA.
I guess I wouldn't hate TJ Watt if that was a realistic possibility.
How much would you give up for him, though?
Yeah, so that's a good question.
I think maybe. Yeah, I mean that's it. Like, of course,
4th or 3rd.
Yeah, you'd have something like that for a 4th, but they're not going to do it, are they? And they've made it clear they're in win now mode, the Steelers.
Yeah.
And especially if they sign Rodgers, so I don't see that. Any remaining free agents or trade targets of interest? That's kind of a similar question. No one jumps to mind. I've not got the free agent list to hand, but in some seasons there's been a player who's gone unsigned during free agency, and Seahawks fans, can you remember when it was Ziggy Ansah? Like, he wasn't signed, everyone's like, sign Ziggy Ansah, and then he signed and everyone celebrated and he was crap. Like, there's nobody like that this year who's like still out there, who I would crave for them to sign. I don't think.
I think what I'm more interested, I haven't done it yet, but I'm more interested in seeing what other teams drafted and seeing kind of like what players may be on the outs, like may be released as training camp starts coming around, and those kind of players, because usually you can get a good veteran or two there that get released because they're bringing in a rookie.
Okay, so as soon as the question has come up, I've found some. Matt Bowen did a piece. So you tell me if any of these players float your boat, Robbie. Okay. So Rasul Douglas. I'll just go through them and you just say yes or no. Rasul Douglas.
No.
Amari Cooper.
No.
Asante Samuel. I mean, maybe, but he's
yeah.
He's a bit unreliable.
Yeah.
And You know, he shouldn't really be a free agent. He is for a reason.
Yeah.
I really like Mike Hilton, but he's older, and do they need an aging slot, Robbie?
No, I don't think so.
But I like him as a player, but
Yeah. Obviously, no to Aaron.
No. J.K. Dobbins, no.
No.
I quite like J.K. Dobbins, but no. Keenan Allen, no, they don't need that, do they?
No, I do like Keenan Allen, but I don't think they need him.
You know, would another one? You know, he didn't do anything really for Chicago, did he?
No.
But he was brilliant the year before that.
Right.
I mean, maybe if you just want to chuck him in there. I mean, how arsed would he be to come in at age 33 and have a bash in Seattle? I don't know. Not sure.
Yeah.
No. Brandon Scherfson, no. Zadarius Smith. Did he do anything for the Lions?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I'd be intrigued by it. I don't know if it's necessary.
Matt Judon had a poor year last year, didn't he, after the big trade? The Falcons don't know what they're doing, do they, man?
I don't think so.
How is that GM still in the job? Jedrick Wills, no.
No.
Deontay Johnson, no. It's all over the place, isn't he?
Yeah.
Justin Simmons' star has faded badly. Bit surprised Julian Blackman's still there, but they've just drafted Evan Wari. Kaiser White, no. Will Hernandez, no. I can't see Von Miller in Seattle, can you?
No.
That's the list. So I think the answer to that, Robbie, is probably there isn't anybody who stands out that badly. I think Shaquille Griffin will come in. I think that's what they're going to do. That's why they had the visit with him. Right, back to the super chat. Shibu says, thanks for all the hard work, Rob and Robbie. I've followed the blog since the 2014 draft when I was 13. That's amazing. I'm 24 now, and I've been addicted to the draft since. How old were you in 2014, Robbie?
Oh gosh, 30.
I was 30.
I was
feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, I was 36.
Wowza. You look good for your age, man.
I appreciate it.
You look better than I do. Michael says, congratulations on another great year of work. I really value your perspective. I think Kubiak's influence was huge in this draft. Do you agree? I think it definitely played a part.
I think 100% it did. I mean, if you look at the traits that they were going for on the offensive line, I think it made a huge impact on how they drafted.
Michael, thank you. Samman Fan 1028 says, thanks for all your work. Still thinking we need D-line depth. Any options in undrafted free agency? Yeah, I think we touched on him a bit ago. I think, Davin Van's an interesting athlete. Cayman Rucker, I don't know what his injury situation is. RJ Oben's not terrible, but not likely to tilt the field in any way. Nazir Stackhouse, Howard Cross. They're kind of the players I'd be looking at there. I'm surprised Eli Cox went undrafted, and Jake Majors, and Clay Webb. Some offensive linemen still on the board. PGZ206. Will be nice to see you on the NFC roundtable one day. I don't know what that is, PGZ, but I'm very open to going on anything. If people invite us on, I typically say yes. CC says, SDB showed up a few years after my return from the Broads. Mustard Potts just making the Premiership. You make fandom better. Thanks from Hawkster. Thank you, CC. Much appreciated. Gabor says, Rob, thanks for your fantastic work on the route to the draft. My first thing of the day is always to see if there's anything on the channel related to our beloved team. Great thanks from Hungary. Thank you, Gabor. Really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate that. I think that is all of them. So there we go.
Did we get Chanman's? He said his super chat didn't get answered.
Sandman?
Chanman. Chanman. C-H-A-N. Chanman.
Oh, I'll have a look for it. Matt sent one in. Appreciate your coverage, Rob. Get some rest. Thanks, Matt. Chanman. I will have a look.
Yeah, he just said his super chat got skipped. He said it again.
Skipped. Chanman. Is it this one? Any trades after the draft that you want?
Oh.
We did do that one, in fact.
Yeah, we did do this one.
Okay.
Yeah,
we did do it, man. So there isn't. I think the answer, if you missed it, was simply that there isn't really any.
I guess I guess the I just saw somebody else posted that. But yeah, Noah Fant. I guess I wouldn't mind trading him. I kind of thought it was going to happen. after the Arroyo pick.
So what do you think about that? So because they're not traded him, and they're going to struggle to trade him because teams will just call their bluff on it and go,
right.
well,
you're going
to cut him, so we're not going to give you anything there. So what would you rather do? Would you rather just have him because you can afford him, or are you going to try and cut him and save the money?
I guess it depends on the roster spot. If there's a player that we're getting in the undrafted free agent that we need a spot and we're going to make a bigger impact, then I would say go for it, right? That would be kind of my thought process on that.
Very quickly, obviously Niners had a lot of picks as well. Do you know what I thought was very interesting with this is, I wasn't that impressed with what they did early on, but then they just took players that were so Kyle Shanahan. So they took Curtis Rourke, the quarterback. We talked about him. Connor Colby, classic blocker. They always get a safety that I like in day 3, and they always end up freaking working out. And that's Marcus Siegel this year. I really liked him at Kansas State. So, boo Niners for doing that. But they didn't address the O-line much at all. And I know I've got a friend who's a Niners fan who was very, very upset about that. They've kind of gone all in on the defense, and I'm not sure there's anything scary about that class for me. I mean, where are the Niners? Do you see them as Mike Florio did a thing about the NFC West, and he said that, well, Arizona are probably only competing for 3rd with Seattle. I don't think this is a Niners Rams thing at all, Robbie. I think the Seahawks are right in the mix, as they were last year.
Yeah, I think they're right in the mix.
Rams didn't have a lot of picks this year. Obviously, they've got the extra first next year. We talked about this yesterday. Terrence Ferguson, I did not see him going that high.
Sorry, Rob. Hold on. Arkansas wide receiver Tyrone Broden is signing with the Seahawks.
Don't know enough about him to pass comment. Apparently, Isis Waxter. What a name that is, by the way. Is this a real name? Save the geese. Isis Waxter.
No idea who that is.
Apparently, Amari Knight is signing with the Seahawks as well. So this is also, and Tyrone Broden has been mentioned by Robbie.
Isaiah Waxter, cornerback out of Villanova, 6'2".
A lot of players to go and digging around afterwards. Yeah. So back to the Rams very quickly because we've been on a long time. Didn't think much of their class. I mean, Chris Paul's okay. Ty Hamilton's, I didn't think much of him at all. Jarquez Hunter is a good running back, but I thought that was a bit rich round 4. I really like Josiah Stewart as a player, but the testing and the injuries make you pause. Thought that was a reach for Ferguson. I don't think that's a field tilting draft for the Rams. I don't think they've taken a big step forward this offseason. I mean, Devontae Adams maybe will do that for them, but he's really their only one. Like, they've had drafts where you go, oh my God, Robbie. Like last year, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, and you think, oh my word, that looks like a nightmare. Yeah. And so it proved, but not with this lot. And then Arizona to finish. We talked about Walter Nolan and Will Johnson being quite boom or bust. Jordan Birch. And then today, I like the Cody Simon pick. I like the Denzel Burt pick. I really like Kitten Crawford. I can't believe he lasted to the 7th round. So I guess kudos to the Cardinals there for a relatively decent day 3. But all in all, Robbie, I thought the Seahawks had the best draft in the NFC West. I think they probably had the best draft in its entirety. So how are you feeling about their position in the division and the NFC off the back of this draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're right in the mix. I'm really excited to see the defense take a step forward, even with some of the newer players that they got and how they're going to fit in. I'm really excited to see what Kubiak can do with the offensive line, see what Grace Abel can do, see how he can, keep some of the guys that we already have and see what he can do with them, and maybe turn them into, actual legit starters instead of guys we're just pissed off at the whole time. So see kind of what they're going to do. But I'm excited to see what Sam Darnold can do. Can he replicate what he did in Minnesota? I mean, I think that's going to be one of the biggest talking points this upcoming season. Are we going to be right back here talking about, well, should Milroe start or should we be drafting someone else? Like, it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
It is, and I think Curtis made a good point. When Quinn Ewers ended up in Miami, you kind of think, well, if Tua gets hurt again, and with only Zach Wilson on there, could Ewers be like their Brock Purdy, and sort of take that role? And you just wonder if Sam Darnold doesn't work out, could Jaylen Milroe sneak in there, even as early as next season. You just don't know how these things are going to play out. So
Yeah.
I think I think Seattle and Dallas for me had the best draft classes. Right. That's as far as we're going to go. We've done an hour and 10 off the back of this. It has been a long last 3 days, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Just a big thank you to everybody in the community who continues to support what we do at Seahawks Draft Blog, what we do on this channel. It's incredible how many people follow the thoughts of some random bloke from Rotherham when he talks about the NFL and the draft and the Seahawks. So I just really appreciate that. The live viewing numbers, were crazy yesterday, and I know they're going to be better today because I can see how many people have been watching live. So just thank you to everybody for doing that. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. There's still going to be stuff, the draft's finished, but we're going to have further reaction coming this week. The blog's going to be really busy with stuff. I'll have a look at 2026 already. There's still going to be stuff ticking on. I will have a break at some point because I need it. But I'll still be doing, other things. I think I'm going to be on Seattle Sports this week on Bump and Stacy as well. So, there's a few other things that are going to go. So basically, subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's try and get it up towards 10,000. Check out SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Massive thank you to everybody who sent the super chats in, and we have just had two more here. So Chuck, it says, this was your best year following since 2012. Chuck, thank you. It really means a lot for you to say that it has been our best year. And Jason, that is a really generous super chat. Thank you so much. Thanks for all you guys do. Been following since 2010, and you're second to none. Thank you, Jason. Really, really appreciate that. Another draft in the books then, Robbie. And listen, thanks to you as well, and to Adam and to Jeff, who do the regular streams with me and kind of put up with me rambling on, as I tend to do about all these things. But it's great to have you with us. And, we've been doing this for a number of years now, man.
That's true.
It's probably coming up to like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I think we're on 7 or 8, actually.
Wow. Yeah. We're doing this a long time. And a blog started in 2008, and in a couple of years it's going to be 20 years that we've been doing this thing. I remember somebody once telling me like a blog's lifespan is you've got about 5 good years out of a blog, and then it'll fade, and then it'll just end. And I remember getting to 5 years thinking, I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
Pushing 20 years of Seahawks Draft Blog. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So thank you for the super chats. Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you to the patrons, everybody who helps with everything like that. Much appreciated. A+ draft for the Seahawks. A+ draft. So good to be able to say that. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go and celebrate if you can. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, stick around. Tomorrow, Rob will be posting his 2026 on board.
Yeah, don't get anybody's hopes up for that. I might be asleep, but thank you to everybody, and we'll see you next time.